All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into the surprisingly dramatic history of something you see every single day but probably never think twice about: the garbage truck.
So, to really get a grip on this story, you've got to understand the scale of the problem we're dealing with right now. Just look at New York City. It generates a staggering 44 million pounds of waste. Yeah, you heard that right. Every single day. To put that in perspective, that's like stacking up 140 statues of liberty and just leaving them out on the curb. And you know who loves this mountain of trash? Millions and millions of rats. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet for them. The problem is so out of control that even exterminators will tell you, look, without a huge systemic change, our efforts are pretty much useless. They'll all be back.
You see, this crisis we're facing today, it isn't new. It's just the latest chapter in this long, messy story. For centuries, how we deal with our trash has literally shaped our cities. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here?
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to rewind the clock to a time when cities were, well, just filthy. Then we'll meet these ambitious reformers called the modernizers, who had this grand vision to fix everything. We'll see how that all came crashing down when it met reality. And finally, we'll look at the new trash revolution that's happening right now.
All right, first up, before we had garbage trucks and organized collection, cities were, let's just say, dangerously gross places to live.
For centuries, the solution for getting rid of waste was, well, pretty simple. Just get it out of the house. That meant people would literally just dump it into the streets, into rivers, any open space they could find. And as you can imagine, this created these horrific, disease-ridden conditions right inside the city walls.
And this wasn't just a smelly inconvenience. No, this filth became a full-blown public health catastrophe. It was deadly. It was the perfect breeding ground for diseases like cholera, typhoid, and yep, the Black Plague. That's what finally pushed governments to actually do something. In fact, check this out. The very first weekly garbage collectors, they were called rakers, were set up way back in the 1350s in Britain. And their job wasn't just about making things look clean. Nope. It was a direct response to the Black Plague. People started to connect the dots. The rats, the trash they were living in, that's what was spreading the disease. So, okay, cities know they have a massive problem. How do they try to fix it? Well, the first big idea was this very top-down, super technological approach.
So, fast forward to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a new group of really ambitious reformers pops up in America. And their story, which is laid out in academic work like the paper we're showing you, it really reveals this burning desire to bring some kind of industrial assembly line order to the absolute chaos of city waste. Now, historians have a name for these guys, and it's not exactly a compliment. They call them the modernizers. These were public officials, engineers, and they truly believed they could control garbage the same way Andrew Carnegie controlled steel, with these huge, centralized, high-tech systems.
See, they looked at the system that was already in place, this patchwork of small private scavengers who were literally sorting trash on the streets to find valuable stuff, and they just saw it as inefficient and gross. Their grand plan? To totally replace this low-cost, market-driven network with massive city-run operations.
And their favorite piece of tech to do this? The incinerator. The incinerator. It promised a clean, modern, sanitary solution that would just, poof, make the waste disappear. But there was a huge problem. These things were incredibly expensive, super political, and really rigid. They were built for one kind of trash, but guess what? The trash itself was already starting to change.
But as you might have guessed, this super expensive, idealistic system was on a collision course with some cold, hard economic reality. And then the Great Depression hit. Suddenly, cities just couldn't afford the modernizers' grand vision anymore. Look at the numbers. $2 a ton for incineration versus just 29 cents a ton for the old method of just burying it. You just can't ignore that difference. In the end, pragmatism beat idealism, hands down.
And you can see this shift happening in the technology, too. Instead of pouring money into fancy disposal tech, innovation suddenly pivoted to collection efficiency. How can we pick it up faster and cheaper? And that's when, in 1938, we get the invention of the modern compacting garbage truck, the load packer. This thing was a total game changer. It meant a single crew could now handle way more waste.
And what really sealed the deal on this trend was World War II.
The military was facing huge shortages of labor and money, so they adopted landfilling as their official go-to system. It was cheap, it was effective. And that one decision, it basically ended the era of the modernizers for good and cemented the landfill as America's #1 way to deal with trash for decades.
So all of this history brings us right back to where we started, full circle, to the really complex challenges we're staring down today. Because, wouldn't you know it, those pragmatic solutions from the past, the cheap landfills, the super convenient plastic bags, well, they've created a whole new set of monster problems for us in the 21st century. We're literally running out of landfill space. We're dealing with hazardous e-waste from things like vapes. And of course, there's the whole microplastics night. And that brings us right back to New York City. The city's trying to kickstart its own trash revolution by making containerization mandatory. This is a huge deal. It officially ends the 50-year reign of the plastic trash bag on the curb, a solution that was only ever meant to be a temporary fix after a sanitation strike back in '69, and it just never went away. So, is it working? Well, the early results are looking pretty promising. I mean, by basically cutting off the rat's main food supply, some of these pilot zones have seen a jaw-dropping 55% drop in rat sightings. It really seems to prove that if you want to control the pests, you have got to control the trash. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? The city is slamming into a classic logistical hurdle. In a place like New York, with its narrow sidewalks and pretty much zero alleys, where in the world do you put all these bins? It is the perfect modern echo of that old tension between a great-sounding idea and the messy reality on the ground. And that's the thing, isn't it? This whole story is a cycle. A problem leads to a solution, which then creates a new problem. It shows us that waste management is a challenge that's never really solved. It just evolves. And it leaves you wondering, what's the next great pivot going to be in this endless story of what we do with what we throw away?